The year was 1967, New York City. It was an era when crime and glamour walked the streets of the city together. Behind the glittering lights of Times Square there was a darkness, mafia gangs, corrupt cops, and the shadows. But among all of these, a story was about to be written that would be counted as one of America's biggest heists for many decades to come. Union Depository. That name itself was an emblem of power and wealth. This place was not just a bank. It was New York's fortress, where bars of gold worth billions of dollars, rare bonds and cash were kept under such security as if an army were guarding its nuclear weapons. Big businessmen, governments, and private clients kept their most valuable possessions there because they believed that no one could ever reach that vault. But that belief was about to change. On cold city nights, while cigarette smoke curled through bars and diners and small-time criminals tried their luck, some other bigger minds were quietly making plans. These were not petty thieves. They were professionals who sought only one thing, a heist that would change their lives forever. Robbing the Union Depository was no ordinary theft. Its security was multi-layered. Armed guards were posted, primitive surveillance like CCTV existed even in that era, and opening the vault required multiple keys and time-locked systems. But as always, every system had some weakness. Finding those cracks was the job of these masterminds. The story begins with an ex-robber who, while sitting in prison for years, studied maps and blueprints. He knew that beneath the Union Depository there were not only concrete walls but also old subway tunnels used during construction in 1930. Those tunnels had been officially sealed. He met an old contact and gathered a team: safe crackers, getaway drivers, and people who knew how to handle explosives and work in tunnels. Everyone was crazy about this heist because it was not only about money, it was a matter of prestige. If someone succeeded in robbing the Union Depository, he would become a legend in the underworld. But the greatest feature of this plan was its aim to minimize violence. The mastermind knew that if blood were shed, the FBI and NYPD would never let them go. Blueprints were studied day and night. Guard shifts were noted. Delivery van schedules were tracked. They even sat in nearby restaurants and bars conducting surveillance to understand when the vault had the least activity. But the real magic started when they discovered a forgotten maintenance tunnel running beneath the vault's foundation. The tunnel had been closed, but old city files and some bribed construction workers revealed the secret, and from there the most daring plan began: to create an underground route to reach the vault. Gradually the team melted into Manhattan's crowd. From the outside they looked ordinary. One man was a taxi driver, another an auto mechanic, another worked in a bar. But at night they all gathered in the tunnel, working over maps, tools, and models. Every drill's sound, every hammer blow brought them closer to that dream where the glittering wealth inside the vault awaited them. Yet they knew a single mistake, a single wrong step, could collapse the entire plan. The name Union Depository made ordinary people tremble, but this team was determined that they would conquer this impregnable fortress with their cunning and courage. And so, in the dark alleys of 1967 New York City, one of the world's most audacious robberies was being written. It was a cold winter night in 1967. Light rain fell on New York streets. The yellow glow of streetlights and the splash of tires in puddles echoed through the alley. The tall buildings of Manhattan stood that night like silent mysteries. Around 1 a.m., when the city's bustle had slowed and the guards patrolling outside the Union Depository were busy with their routine rounds, 5 people stood ready in an old Manhattan basement. Their clothes were plain, dark overalls, gloves, and caps. Determination was written on their faces. No conversation, just deep breaths and a single dream in their eyes: to reach the vault. First they made their way to that hidden tunnel. It began in the basement of an empty building that looked from the outside like a dilapidated warehouse. But inside it would prove to be their most valuable shortcut. After opening a heavy metal door they descended into the dark tunnel one by one. They had only flashlights, whose beams revealed damp walls and glistening drops of water. This tunnel was the result of weeks of their hard work, cutting stones, drilling concrete, and slowly removing debris so as not to arouse suspicion. That night they were going to use this passage to reach the vault for the last time. After crawling on their knees for about half an hour they reached the spot where the vault's outer wall was only a few feet away. Here they faced the riskiest task: cutting through the concrete wall with a silent drill. They did not have modern machines. They had the tools of that era: But that was the triumph of their preparation. They had specially designed drill bits and mufflers so that no sound would travel out. As the hole in the wall grew, every team member remained alert. Guards' shifts were running overhead, and if even the slightest sound were heard, the entire plan would collapse. Luck was with them that night. After many hours of effort, a small hole was finally made. A gust of cold air came from inside. One by one they enlarged that hole, and then they all went down into the vault. The sight was breathtaking. Piles of gleaming gold bars, bundles of cash, and files of rare bonds lay before them. Each man stopped for a moment. That dream they had risked their lives for weeks to achieve now stood before them in reality. But time was short. They immediately began their work. The safe crackers took out their specialized tools. 2 men started stuffing gold bricks and cash into bags. Every movement was calculated, neither too fast nor too slow. They knew a tiny mistake could trigger an alarm. For about 40 minutes everything inside the vault proceeded. The bags were filled and every member repeatedly checked his watch. Outside, the driver had his van ready. The engine was running. Then came the critical moment. They decided to take as much as they could carry. Greed could become their enemy. As they exited back through the tunnel, everyone was drenched in sweat, but their eyes shone with victory. Light rain was still falling outside. They removed their outfits and put on clothes that made them look exactly like ordinary taxi drivers and laborers. Before dawn, the van silently vanished through the city streets. No one noticed them. No gunshot, no alarm, no dramatic chase. The impregnable walls of the Union Depository had quietly been breached that night, and New York City had no idea yet that history's boldest robbery had taken place. On the morning of April 26, the Union Depository in Manhattan was preparing to open as usual. Guards were on their routine rounds outside. Clerks were carrying their files inside. Everything seemed perfectly normal. But when the vault supervisor arrived, his eyes froze. The vault's heavy steel door looked completely intact from the outside. No scratches, no damage, yet once inside, everything was wrong. Small chunks of concrete lay scattered in the corners, and a thin layer of dirt and dust covered the floor. At first no one understood how this had happened, but when eyes moved toward the storage racks, every face turned pale. Several cabinets were empty. Bundles of cash were missing. Some boxes were gone. And most shocking of all, the neat rows of gold bars that had been arranged there the day before were now gone. Silence hung for a while. Everyone felt as if they were in a dream. Then suddenly a guard shouted, "Sir, this is a robbery. The vault has been emptied." Immediately alarms were sounded throughout the building. The police were called. Within minutes, Manhattan police cars were parked outside the bank. Uniformed officers ran into the vault, but it was a puzzle even for them. No forced entry had been made. The locks were safe. Alarm systems were silent. The door was entirely intact. So the question arose, how did the thieves get in? The FBI was notified at once. By noon, bank officials, detectives, and federal agents were standing in the vault. Agents searched every corner with flashlights, and then a sharp-witted investigator noticed a slightly uneven patch in the rear wall near the floor. When he touched it, a little moisture and cold air came through. When that section was knocked, the sound was hollow. The agents understood. This was the secret passage. Tools were brought and the section of wall was broken open. Behind it, a narrow tunnel was revealed. Everyone was astonished to see a tunnel dug, skillfully leading directly out from the vault. There were drill marks on its walls, wooden supports installed, and small bags of earth scattered here and there. This was not the work of amateurs. It was the result of highly professional and perfectly planned work. What followed excited everyone even more. The robbery was clean. No fingerprints, no shoe prints, no tools left behind, only damp soil. By evening the news had reached the media. The next day every newspaper headline read, "New York Fortress breached, Union Depository robbed, millions missing." Reporters stood outside the bank. TV cameras gave non-stop coverage. Everyone was asking the same question. How could someone enter such a high-security vault without setting off an alarm? In the public imagination, this robbery looked like something out of a Hollywood film. No shootout, no bloodshed, just a masterstroke. Agents first began examining the tunnel. Officially, the bank only admitted that millions of dollars had been stolen, but insiders were whispering that the actual amount was much higher, perhaps up to $40 to $50 million. The tunnel started from an old, nearly empty building in Manhattan. From the outside, the building looked completely vacant, but when agents went inside, they found old mattresses, canned food, and broken parts of digging tools. All this indicated that the thieves had been living there for months while constructing the tunnel. Yet there was no trace of anyone, no fingerprints, no IDs, no photographs, nothing. It seemed as if the thieves had wiped every trace behind them. The FBI also focused on bank staff. Dozens of employees were interrogated. From guards to clerks, everyone's background was scrutinized. There was certainly suspicion that insider help had been provided because the thieves had exact knowledge of the vault's schedules, alarm patterns, and guard rotations. But despite every investigation, no concrete evidence surfaced. Media rumors continued to grow. Reporters asked tough questions at the FBI's press conferences. How much money was stolen? Were gold bars missing? Was it the mafia? As the investigation progressed, many theories emerged. Some said it was the work of the Italian mafia. At that time, mafia families exerted influence in every corner of New York. The Gambino and Lucchese families' names were most often mentioned. Investigators believed that only such organizations could pull off something so daring and on such a large scale. The mafia had resources, manpower, money, and political cover. But the FBI, there was a problem. The mafia was traditionally interested in quick cash and extortion. A technically complex and months-long heist like the Union Depository robbery was far beyond their usual style. The second suspicion went towards the bank's internal people. The FBI interrogated almost every senior staff member and guard. The questions were the same. Did anyone leak the vault's schedules? Experts believed that the thief knew the vault's exact alarm cycles and rotation timings. Such knowledge was difficult for an outsider to obtain. But when agents conducted polygraph tests and dug into the employees' backgrounds, nothing suspicious came up. None of the employees suddenly became rich, nor did anyone seem to have mafia links. The third theory created even more intrigue. Some engineers said that the tunnel, built with such precision, made it clear that mining experts were involved. A list was prepared of miners and diggers who had worked on Manhattan's underground construction projects. But even there, the FBI found no solid lead. Meanwhile, newspapers and TV channels began publishing their own lists of suspects. One newspaper wrote that the job might have been done by ex-military commandos who had experience with guerrilla tactics and engineering during the Vietnam War. Some linked it to the Cold War, suggesting that this heist was actually a covert operation by the Soviet Union to embarrass the American economy. The rumors got even wilder. At one point, a report surfaced in the media claiming that some of the gold bars had secretly been shipped to Europe and deposited in Swiss banks. The FBI even alerted Interpol, but no evidence was found. Public imagination turned the robbery into a Robin Hood-style legend. Some believed that the thieves took the money and helped the poor. Over time, the case turned into a dark mystery. Neither fingerprints of the thieves nor eyewitness statements were ever found. Even after police sketches, tips, and endless interrogations, the FBI couldn't reach any suspects. Every theory ended in the same place, with no solid proof anywhere. The Union Depository robbery slowly moved out of the realm of a police case and became a myth. Years passed, but as the case grew colder, its story became even more dazzling. In the streets of New York, all kinds of tales began to circulate about it. Elderly men standing on subway platforms would say, "Son, that gold is still buried somewhere under Manhattan's soil." Crime scene tour guides began to include it in their story. Gradually, the Union Depository robbery became a kind of urban legend. The media also fanned its flames. Newspapers called it the heist of the century. Magazines put glossy covers with questions like, "Where is the gold?" Every year on the anniversary, newspapers would reprint the story of that night. TV documentaries made it so popular that even the next generation adopted this crime as part of their cultural memory. For the first time, banks began installing motion sensors, infrared alarms, and seismic detectors. New technologies were developed to prevent tunnels and underground threats. This robbery indirectly became a catalyst for modern bank security systems. Culturally, this heist inspired countless creators. In the 70s and 80s, Hollywood produced thrillers based on bank robberies and tunnel heists. In crime novels, mysterious underground robberies became central plot. Some writers even presented it as a Cold War conspiracy or a secret government cover-up. In public imagination, the thieves slowly turned into anti-heroes. People began to see them less as criminals and more as masterminds. Some even called them modern-day Robin Hoods. They didn't hurt anyone, they just challenged the system. The biggest impact was that decades later, whenever a new bank heist took place, the media compared it to the Union Depository robbery. Headlines would read, "Not since the 1967 Union Depository heist has New York seen such a daring crime." Today, more than half a century has passed. The case remains officially unsolved. Neither the thieves were found, nor the gold. But the legacy is so vast that this robbery became not just a crime, but a part of America's criminal folklore. Whenever anyone talks about the perfect crime, the name Union Depository robbery always comes up. And perhaps that is the greatest impact of this heist. It proved that sometimes mystery itself is more powerful than the truth. New York nights still shine. Amid the skyscrapers, the Union Depository still stands, just as strong and silent as it was in. But beneath its walls and the ground lies a mystery that has troubled police, journalists, and ordinary people for more than half a century. Sometimes workers in the dark subway tunnels whisper that they've heard strange sounds, as if someone is digging beyond the wall. In the old streets of the Bronx, elders still say the gold is buried somewhere nearby. In FBI files, the case is marked unsolved. The motive, the method, and the mastermind all remain theories. But the truth is, as missing as those $50 million worth of gold. Perhaps the thieves vanished into the night and lived luxurious lives under new identities. Perhaps someone betrayed them, and the gold sank deep into a river. Or maybe that gold still lies hidden in some tunnel beneath Manhattan waiting for someone to find it. But that's the real thrill of this story. Even if the treasure is ever found, its shine will never match that of its legend. Today, when you walk through the crowded streets of New York, you might never realize how many stories lie buried beneath your feet. Yet one question still floats in the air. Did a group of thieves really dig a tunnel and rob the world's most secure vault? And if yes, then where did their secret go? The Union Depository robbery was not just a heist, it was a cinematic chapter that changed crime history forever. And even today, whenever someone says the perfect crime doesn't exist, only one name echoes in their mind: the Union Depository robbery.